Part 3. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Ju Yi. Chapter 21. After spending more than a month together, he had a basic understanding of Wei Yuxian and what kind of person she was. She is a strong and principled tragic little white rabbit. She is good looking, and the movements and expressions she makes subconsciously are also very cute. She is very different from other women. He somewhat knew why he broke the law that night, because she was different from others in the beginning, and in his eyes, she was special. In the previous 29 years, he had been stoic and had no interest, affection, or desire for women outside. But her appearance completely broke the principle he had adhered to for 29 years. This was not the case a month ago. He took her home just for the 2 children in her belly. He still had no other feelings for her, but now, he paid more and more attention to her. Sometimes he thinks about what she does at home and school, and asks the servant to report her daily activities to him so that he can understand. Can't help but miss her. This is a very strange feeling. He has never been so interested in anyone. However, she seemed to be very afraid of herself. If she were at home, she would hide in the room and refuse to come out. What should be done so that she is not afraid of herself? Fu Xuanyi's eyes held an opaque meaning, and the Buddhist beads in his hand were rubbed vigorously by his thumb. Here, Wei Yuxian went to the classroom as usual. There were full classes on Monday, and she felt a little overwhelmed. It may also be because of her health that her energy is not as good as before. She heard that pregnancy would lead to tiredness easily, drowsiness, and loss of appetite. At first, she thought it was an exaggeration, but after experiencing it herself, she realized that it was all true. She is also a little worried that when she gets older, she will not have so much energy to take care of her studies. Also, after pregnancy, you will still have pregnancy reactions. You can't eat well or sleep well, which sounds very scary. She was also afraid that she would have such a reaction and that she would not be able to study. Fortunately, so far, she has had no other reaction except being a little tired. This is a relatively lucky thing. She also hopes that her pregnancy reaction will not be too great. Walk all the way to the classroom, sit down in the front row, and listen to the class carefully. Time passes quickly. When you do something seriously, no matter what you do, time will pass quickly. The second period of class arrived. Wei Yuxian rushed to the next classroom. As soon as she sat down, a familiar person sat next to her, Cheng Jinjiao. Since they added WeChat last time, their relationship has become better, and they are Wei Yuxian's only friend in school. Yuxian, we meet again, Cheng Jinjiao greeted her enthusiastically. Hi, long time no see, classmate Chen. Wei Yuxian also greeted him. Cheng Jinjiao said, I told you not to call me classmate Cheng. It's too unfamiliar. We are already so familiar. Yuxian can just call me a Jing. Wei Yuxian felt that such a title was too intimate. She thought that her relationship with Cheng Jinjiao was not that good yet, so she called her classmate Cheng Jinjiao. But since he said it again today, she should change her words. It would be no problem to have a better relationship with him. People only get to know each other after getting along for a long time. Jing, good morning, she said. Cheng Jinjiao was then satisfied and said to her with a smile, good morning Yuxian. There were still 2 minutes left in class, so Cheng Jinjiao took the time to chat with her. Yuxian, would you like to go to dinner together after class? I've invited you several times. This time Wei Yuxian still refused and explained the reason. No, Jing, my family brought me food, so I won't eat in the cafeteria. Cheng Jinjiao said with some regret and asked, why do your family members bring you food every day? Wei Yuxian nodded and said, yes, because my health is not very good and my family is taking care of me, so I eat meals sent from home every day. She made up a little lie. In fact, it was not because she was not in good health, but because she was pregnant. Cheng Jinjiao felt very regretful and said, I still want to go to dinner with you, but in this case I'd better forget it. Then I'll treat you to milk tea. How about today's lunch? Wei Yuxian immediately waved her hand and said, No, no, I can't drink milk tea. I won't be able to sleep at night after drinking it. Milk tea is a very delicious thing. It is very sweet. She also likes to drink it. She has drunk it several times, but every time she drinks it, she cannot sleep at night, which makes her very distressed. Fortunately, she is not addicted to milk tea, so she doesn't have to drink it. Moreover, milk tea is not cheap and she rarely drinks it. Cheng Jinjiao continued, it doesn't matter if you can't drink tea. There is also juice in the milk tea shop. If I treat you, just treat it as a favor, okay? Wei Yuxian was still hesitant. Cheng Jinjiao took advantage of the victory and asked for a few more words. She had no choice but to agree to drink juice with him at noon. Cheng Jinjiao was very happy. He said yeah and said, that's great. The class bell rang at this time, and they stopped chatting. Cheng Jinjiao consciously did not disturb Wei Yuxian's class, and sat quietly aside, glancing at her secretly from time to time. In the back row of the classroom, Nana Ding, Chen Wei, and Fen Yi were still sitting together. The three of them looked at Wei Yuxian and Cheng Jinjiao sitting together, and their teeth itched with hatred. Chen Wei said, Sister Na, this poor guy Wei Yuxian went to hook up with Cheng Jinjiao again. Are they dating? Fen Yi continued, Sister Na, Wei Yuxian's life is getting better and better recently. She doesn't wear the same clothes, she eats well every day, and even her cell phone is a real pineapple phone. After their observations over the past few days, they discovered that Wei Yuxian's mobile phone was genuine and not a fake as they thought. Also, the food Wei Yuxian ate every day was very rich and not cheap, and many of the ingredients were high-end supplements. So they gradually began to suspect that the big-name clothes Wei Yuxian was wearing were all real. Otherwise, how could she wear different clothes every day, and they are all from the same brand? Even if she buys fakes, it's impossible for her to buy so many fakes. So, what exactly happened to Wei Yuxian? They really want to know. Ding Nana gritted her teeth and said, I also found that she has gained a little weight recently and looks much more energetic than before. How did she do it and become so rich overnight? Chen Wei was also very confused and said, she is not living in the dormitory, but has moved out. With the way she was before, how could she have the money to do these things? I think she must be being kept by someone. Fen Yi expressed her suspicion, is she and Cheng Jinjiao together? Jinjiao always sits with her in every major class. They shouldn't be dating, right? After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Ju Yi. Chapter 22. Ding Nana pinched the pen in her hand, glared at Fen Yi fiercely, and said, impossible. How could Cheng Jinjiao be with her? Cheng Jinjiao is handsome and can be regarded as the favorite of their department. I wonder how many girls like him. Even she likes Cheng Jinjiao. She had always wanted Cheng Jinjiao's contact information, but every time she asked, Cheng Jinjiao never gave it to her. How could a person as good as Cheng Jinjiao fall in love with a poor guy like Wei Yuxian? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Ding Nana comforted herself in her heart, staring at the two people in the front row. One was the person she liked, and the other was the person she hated. No matter who Cheng Jinjiao is with, he can't be with Wei Yuxian. Wei Yuxian is not worthy. A poor girl like her is not worthy of Cheng Jinjiao. Fen Yi also realized that she had said something wrong and quickly said, yes, I made a mistake. Cheng Jinjiao will definitely not be with Wei Yuxian. She, Wei Yuxian, is a piece of shit and is not worthy of Cheng Jinjiao. Chen Wei also quickly flattered Ding Nana and said, Wei Yuxian must have been kept by an old man. It can't be wrong. Sister Na, I will follow her secretly today to see if the old man brings her food. Ding Nana nodded with a cold face and said yeah, still focusing on the two people in front of her. Wei Yuxian, I won't make it easy for you. Do you want to seduce Cheng Jinjiao? Wearing such beautiful clothes every day is just to seduce Cheng Jinjiao, right? I tell you. Cheng Jinjiao is mine. I will never let you succeed. Ding Nana felt that Wei Yuxian was being taken care of outside, so she suddenly became so rich, with a good mobile phone, good clothes and good food and drink every day. She also felt that Wei Yuxian was not satisfied with only seduce men outside, she also wanted to seduce a few men inside the school so that others would be willing to spend money for her. As poor as she is, if she wants to make money quickly, there is nothing else to do but this, she is a dirty and despicable bitch. I won't let Cheng Jinjiao fall into your trap. Don't even think about getting a penny from Cheng Jinjiao. With this thought in mind, Ding Nana became even more hostile towards Wei Yuxian, thinking about how to stumbling upon Wei Yuxian in the future. Fen Yi and Chen Wei looked at Ding Nana with a cold expression and looked at each other, feeling sad for Wei Yuxian. In fact, they didn't want to target Wei Yuxian. After all, everyone was an educated person, but no, if they didn't follow Ding Nana's lead, Ding Nana would also target them. Therefore, they could only choose to stand on the same front as Ding Nana and make sarcastic remarks to Wei Yuxian. Ding Nana's family is rich, much richer than theirs. They don't dare to go against Ding Nana and can only follow her. In the front, Wei Yuxian suddenly felt a little cold, thinking that the weather was cooling down again, so she tightened her coat to resist the cold. From now on, the weather will only get colder and colder, and the clothes she needs to add will become thicker and thicker. Winter is coming. Winter here in Kyoto comes earlier and is much colder than that in her hometown. Fortunately, she lives in the Fu family now, and the old lady bought her clothes. Otherwise, the few clothes she brought here would not be enough. Warmth. Ding 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 dash, the bell rang for the end of get out of class, and the teacher said goodbye to the students. Wei Yuxian packed her things and stood up, saying, Ajing, I have to get food now, and I can go to the milk tea shop later. Cheng Jinjiao wanted to go with her and said, I'll get it with you. Wei Yuxian hurriedly refused, fearing that he would see Aunt Fu, and said, No, no, I can just go by myself. You go to eat first, and we will meet at the milk tea shop later. Cheng Jinjiao had no choice but to take a step back and said, Well, I'll go to the milk tea shop to buy juice now, and you can go there after taking the food. How about we eat together in the cafeteria? Wei Yuxian agreed and said, Okay, then I'll go get the food first. After walking out of the teaching building, they split up. Cheng Jinjiao went to the canteen to buy juice. There were many people, so he had to go early, otherwise he would have to wait for a long time. Wei Yuxian went to the usual place to get food. She was walking on the school road, the cold wind was blowing, and the few leaves were blown loudly. Not far behind her, Chen Wei and Fen Yi followed her secretly to see where she was going to get the food and who was delivering it to her. Wei Yuxian was quite vigilant. After walking for a few minutes, she looked back and found nothing unusual before continuing to walk forward. Chen Wei and Fen Yi hid behind the tall trees, and she almost saw them. They patted their chests and breathed a sigh of relief. She was surprisingly alert, but she wasn't alert enough. Or maybe it's because Chen Wei and Fen Yi were too cunning and didn't follow very closely, and there were trees as cover, so Wei Yuxian didn't notice. When we walked to the agreed place, Aunt Fu was already waiting there, holding the familiar thermos bucket in her hand. Madam Aunt Fu called with a smile, Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Aunt Fu, thank you for your hard work. Wei Yuxian took the rice in her hand. It's not hard, the most important thing is that Madam eats well. Aunt Fu said, Madam, are you cold? There are clothes in the car, do you want to add another one? Wei Yuxian shook her head, it's not cold, it's quite suitable now, no need to add more. Aunt Fu, I'll leave first, and you should go back early. Okay, I'll leave in a moment. Aunt Fu stood there and waited for Wei Yuxian to leave and disappear before getting in the car and leaving the school. Behind some hidden trees, Chen Wei and Fen Yi watched Aunt Fu's car leave, their eyes full of shock. Fen Yi said, that car just now, must cost several million. Chen Wei swallowed, I don't know much about cars, but I heard from my dad that this brand requires several million to afford it. Fen Yi, what kind of bad luck did Wei Yuxian have? She actually knows such a rich person. The food she eats every day is sent by that woman, right? I think it should be, but I feel that the woman's attitude towards Wei Yuxian is very respectful, so this woman may be a servant or something. Fen Yi was even more shocked, if even a servant can afford to drive such a good car, how rich must the person behind Wei Yuxian be? Chen Wei shook her head and said, I don't know. Forget it, let's not talk about this anymore. Let's go back quickly. Sister Na is still waiting for our news. Here, Wei Yuxian did not go back to the dormitory, but took the thermos bucket to the nearest canteen. She and Cheng Jinjiao had an appointment in this canteen. At the same time, the milk tea in it was also the best. This is what Cheng Jinjiao said. As for whether the milk tea here is the best, Wei Yuxian doesn't know. She hasn't had the chance to taste it yet. Today is her first time consuming milk tea at the school's milk tea shop. Warm reminder, if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to inform us. We will handle it as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Ju Yi. Chapter 23. When Wei Yuxian walked to the milk tea shop, Cheng Jinjiao was already sitting in the shop. There were 2 glasses of juice and a meal in front of him. It was obvious that he wanted to have lunch with Wei Yuxian. She walked to the chair opposite Cheng Jinjiao and sat down, saying, I'm sorry for keeping you waiting. When Cheng Jinjiao saw her, a bright smile appeared on his face and he said, it's okay. I just sat down and the juice was just ready. Here, that's the hot juice for you. Wei Yuxian took the juice and it was indeed warm. In the cold winter, drinking something warm couldn't be more comfortable. Thank you. How much is it? I'll transfer it to you. Wei Yuxian took out her mobile phone and was about to transfer money to Cheng Jinjiao. Cheng Jinjiao quickly stopped her and said, no, 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 I already told you that I bought you a drink. If you pay, how can it be considered that I bought you a drink? But Wei Yuxian was embarrassed to let him treat him, and said, I'd better pass it on to you, otherwise I'll feel uncomfortable. Cheng Jinjiao, it's okay, it's okay. You really don't need Yuxian. It's nothing to treat friends to a glass of juice. Just accept it. Wei Yuxian was about to refuse, but Cheng Jinjiao persuaded her a few more times before she stopped thinking about transferring money and accepted the glass of juice. She has very few friends, no one except one who is a better friend, and she doesn't know how to get along with friends. Seeing that she finally accepted it, Cheng Jinjiao breathed a sigh of relief and said, okay, let's eat here. I've prepared the food. Wei Yuxian opened the thermos bucket, took out the food inside, and said, okay, you can eat here today. She doesn't feel embarrassed when eating in the cafeteria. She just wants to be looked at. Anyway, she is used to it. Cheng Jinjiao chatted with Wei Yuxian while eating, and both of them were in a good mood. Wei Yuxian drank the glass of juice. It tasted very good and the sweetness was just right. It was not overly sweet. After about 20 minutes of lunch, Wei Yuxian felt a little sleepy. She packed up the thermos bucket and said, "Ajing, I'll go back to bed first. See you next time." Cheng Jinjiao said goodbye to her reluctantly. "Okay, see you next time." Even if he couldn't bear to say goodbye to Wei Yuxian, he still had to say goodbye to her. The next time they met would be a week later. Wei Yuxian walked back to the dormitory carrying the thermos bucket. Nana and Ding were still in the dormitory, and they didn't give her a good look from the moment she entered the room. However, Wei Yuxian was used to their behavior, because every time she came back to the dormitory and saw their behavior, it was always bad, and they never gave her a good look. As usual, she ignored them and walked back to her place, but she didn't want to ignore them, but they wouldn't let her go. In other words, Ding Nana will not let her go. When she passed Ding Nana's position, she grabbed her hand with such force that she almost dropped the thermos bucket on her hand to the ground. "Stop," Ding Nana said loudly, her tone full of anger. Wei Yuxian didn't know why she was angry again. In her eyes, Ding Nana was an unstable person. She was happy one second and angry the next. How did she offend her this time? Wei Yuxian looked at her expressionlessly and asked, "What are you doing?" Ding Nana stared at her fiercely, like a vicious snake, and asked, "Did you just have dinner with Cheng Jinjiao?" Wei Yuxian looked at her, her eyes widening slightly. She didn't know where she knew it from, but she didn't care. She said, "Yes, Cheng Jinjiao and I are having dinner. Please let me go." Instead, Ding Nana held her hand tighter and stood up to confront her. "How dare you? Who asked you to seduce Cheng Jinjiao? Don't think that you are getting better with the old man and you have the capital to dress up. You can seduce Cheng Jinjiao." Wei Yuxian couldn't understand what she was saying at all, and thought she was going crazy for no reason. "I do not understand what you're saying." "Pretend. Pretend. You are so well dressed, well fed, and so well used. Isn't it because you were kept by an old man?" she said. Wei Yuxian just thought it was funny and didn't know how she came up with this. Yes, she is well dressed, well fed, and well used recently, but she is not being kept by an old man. She just, temporarily stayed at Fu Xuanyi's home. These were not what she wanted at the beginning. Fu Xuanyi had to take her over and keep the child, so these things happened. It's not like Ding Nana said, she was being kept. She said, "I don't know where you heard this news, but I can only tell you, don't believe everything. I, Wei Yuxian, will never admit anything I haven't done." Ding Nana was irritated by her attitude and said, "You still don't admit it? Then tell me, where do you get so much money? How can a poor guy like you get the money to live such a good life?" This was the first time Wei Yuxian resisted her like this. Instead of pretending not to hear anything, she dared to talk back to her. This made Ding Nana very angry, and she even had the urge to hit someone. In her eyes, Wei Yuxian should look like a submissive coward, unable to resist, and will only be bullied by them in this life. But now, the submissive coward actually had the courage to resist and even talked back to her. "Sure enough, because you have an old man, you think you have a backer, right? So I was very tough when I spoke." Naturally, Wei Yuxian would not tell her the origin of the things on her body, and said, "It has nothing to do with you, Ding Nana, let me go." Ding Nana threw her hand away and glanced at her hand with disgust, as if she had touched something dirty. She said sarcastically, "I guess you don't dare to say it. As for you, other than selling to an old man, how else can you make money so quickly? Don't deny it, you are being kept by an old man." Wei Yuxian couldn't explain it to her. This woman was too insistent on her own opinions and would never listen to a word from others. No matter how much she said, she wouldn't believe it, so she simply stopped talking. Talking too much is a waste of time. There is nothing to say to such a person. Without saying a word, she turned and walked towards her bed. The next second, Ding Nana grabbed her again and said, "I haven't finished speaking yet. Why are you in such a hurry to leave?" Wei Yuxian endured the anger in her heart and turned around. "What else do you want to ask? If you are throwing dirty water on me, then don't say it. It's pointless. Did Nana Ding throw enough dirty water on her? Anyway, she had lost count of the amount of dirty water Ding Nana had thrown at her during the time she moved in. Therefore, these words have no meaning at all. It's a waste of her time if she doesn't listen. With this time, she might as well go to bed and rest her mind so that she can concentrate on her lectures in the afternoon. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Ju Yi. Chapter 24. Ding Nana finally revealed her ultimate goal. "I warn you, don't seduce Cheng Jinjiao. Otherwise, I will make you walk around without food." Wei Yuxian almost laughed at her. "I have never seen such an unreasonable person. When did she seduce Cheng Jinjiao? How did Ding Nana figure out that she was going to seduce Cheng Jinjiao? She has such a serious problem in her brain. The kind that needs to be cured." But Wei Yuxian didn't dare to say this out loud. She just scolded her secretly in her heart, pretending to be calm on the outside, and said, "I didn't seduce anyone. Everything is just your imagination." She knows now that Ding Nana likes Cheng Jinjiao, so no one is allowed to like Cheng Jinjiao, including her. However, she didn't like Cheng Jinjiao either. Ding Nana kept saying that she was seducing Cheng Jinjiao. Where did she get the confidence from? She admitted that she and Cheng Jinjiao had gotten a little closer these days, but they only remained friends and didn't do anything out of the ordinary. Ding Nana said angrily, "You still don't admit it? You dressed up in such a gorgeous way, didn't you want to seduce Cheng Jinjiao, but who did you want to seduce? Don't think I can't tell. Is it because the old man can no longer satisfy you? Or is it that the old man is about to get tired of you, so you want to find a good wife as soon as possible? Everyone knows that Cheng Jinjiao's family is rich. He is handsome. How many people want to be friends with him, but he sticks to you? If not you to seduce him, what else is it?" Wei Yuxian no longer wanted to talk to her, their thoughts were not on the same channel at all. Now Ding Nana just believed that she had seduced Cheng Jinjiao and refused to listen to anything she said, only insisting on her own ideas. But at this moment she had to say, "Cheng Jinjiao and I are just friends. Believe it or not, I didn't seduce anyone. As for where the clothes I wear come from, it has nothing to do with you." Ding Nana gritted her teeth fiercely and said, "I don't care whether what you say is true or false, you'd better be just friends with Cheng Jinjiao. If I know that you have ill intentions towards him, don't blame me for being rude to you." Wei Yuxian threw her hand away, scolding her for being crazy in her mind, walked back to her seat, sat down, and cleared the table. Ding Nana was still cursing endlessly. "Wei Yuxian, for a poor guy like you, don't even think about flying up a branch and becoming a phoenix. You have been serving as a third party for others all your life. Don't think that you have found a backer just because you have found an old man. He is just playing with you, saying that he likes you, but he doesn't know how to belittle you in his heart. You'd better be self-aware and don't take yourself too seriously. No one will like you in your life. You are just a poor ghost who no one loves. Poor guy who can't even afford food." Wei Yuxian chose to block her curses, went outside to the balcony to wash the thermos bucket, quickly got into bed, closed the bed curtains, and put on headphones to block out the unpleasant curses. Listening to the brisk music, she breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, I no longer have to hear those unpleasant sounds. Although she seemed to have no reaction, in fact, the abuses still affected her mood very much. At least, before the quarrel with Ding Nana, she was still in a good mood. She was originally in a good mood today, and she thought she could stay in such a good mood all day long. Who would have thought that it would stop at noon? Ding Nana's unreasonable words, saying that she was being kept, seducing Cheng Jinjiao, and scolding her that she would never be able to hold her head up in her life, all deeply cut into her heart. Whose heart is not made of flesh? Who can hear these words and not be touched? Wei Yuxian couldn't do it anyway. Relaxing light music was echoing in her ears, but Wei Yuxian's mood was not getting better. It was heavy and she was very unhappy. In the sound of soft music, she finally forgot all her worries and fell into sleep. Her world finally became completely quiet. More than an hour later, driven by her biological clock, Wei Yuxian woke up. It was time to get up, wash up, and go to her next class. After getting up, she was still in the same bad mood as before she fell asleep, and what Nanading said was constantly in her mind. With this mood, Wei Yuxian survived 2 classes and came to the end of school. She frowned, hurried outside the school with a large canvas bag on her shoulders. Walking into the alley, I looked towards a familiar place and saw a car parked there, belonging to Fu Xuanyi. She walked forward quickly, opened the passenger door, got in, and said hello to Fu Xuanyi, Master Xian. Yeah, the man's voice was still as cold as ever, and the expression on his face was always indifferent, without any emotion, making people feel that he was an emotionless robot. Seeing his face, Wei Yuxian felt even more tired and didn't want to be in the same space with such an oppressive person. Now she just wants to find a quiet place, stay by herself for a while, no one will disturb her, let her be quiet for a while, don't think about those troublesome things, and don't deal with those troublesome people. She leaned her head against the car window, listened to the sound of the car starting, and closed her eyes. Fu Xuanyi drove the car calmly, and could feel the low mood of the people around him. Her current state was like a stray cat hiding in a corner and licking its fur alone. She looked very pitiful. Fu Xuanyi's body pressure unconsciously became lower, and he asked, "Who bullied you?" Wei Yuxian thought for a moment that there was something wrong with her ears. Otherwise, why would she hear Fu Xuanyi's voice? For more than a month, they had no communication during the whole process of going back. Today, he asked, "Who bullied you?" Wei Yuxian opened her eyes and looked at the man over there. From her angle, she couldn't see the man's front face, but could only see his profile. This man's profile is also very beautiful. No matter which angle he looks at, he is flawless and impeccable. She wasn't sure if she heard correctly. After hesitating for a while, she asked in a low voice, "Are you talking to me?" Fu Xuanyi turned to look at her and gave her a definite answer, the word "hm." Wei Yuxian was now sure that Fu Xuanyi had really spoken just now. He asked her if she was being bullied. Could it be that her face was so obvious that even Fu Xuanyi could tell that she was in a bad mood? No, that's not the point. The point is, why does Fu Xuanyi care about her mood? Also, he asked her why she was in a bad mood. Wei Yuxian looked at the man's almost demonic profile, thought about it carefully, and said, "No one bullied me, it's just, the class today was a bit difficult and I didn't fully understand it. When I get back, I'll take a closer look at the textbook." After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 25. She hid the fact that she was being bullied and found an excuse to tell him. Ding Nana bullied her for more than a day or two, but it did not cause any financial harm to her, so she could endure it and thought it was nothing. At most, she would just listen to her more unpleasant words. There is no need to tell Fu Xuanyi these things. He is a busy man, so how can he care about these things? Plus, she didn't want to tell him. Fu Xuanyi turned his head and looked at her again, with a deep meaning in his eyes. He didn't know whether he believed her words, which made Wei Yuxian a little nervous. What if Fu Xuanyi doesn't believe it and goes to the school to investigate? With his status, it is easy to investigate these things. With just a phone call, someone will send the things to him. But she really didn't want Fu Xuanyi to get involved in the school, and she didn't want people to know that Fu Xuanyi had brought about her changes these days. The man turned his head back, looked at the road ahead, and drove seriously. Wei Yuxian was afraid that he wouldn't believe it, so she tried her best to pretend to be calm and said, "The teacher is probably not in a good mood today. He didn't explain everything thoroughly. Let us read by ourselves, Master Xian, can you help me read it tonight?" She chose to jump from one fire pit to another in order to make Fu Xuanyi believe that she was in a bad mood because she didn't do well in class. She asked Fu Xuanyi to teach her because she thought that Fu Xuanyi was the president of the Fu group and must be very good at finance, so maybe he could teach her. What the teacher taught today was indeed a bit difficult, and she was in a bad mood in the afternoon, so she didn't listen to some of it. She didn't know what was wrong with her recently. Her mood always became depressed easily, and she easily became sad at the slightest bad thing. For example, what Nanading said to her at noon, she didn't take it to heart before. She would feel sad for a while, and she would adjust her mood soon, but today. It's been an afternoon, but she still hasn't been able to adjust, and she's still in a bad mood. She didn't know that this is how pregnant women tend to think too much and have uncontrollable emotions. Fu Xuanyi grasped the steering wheel with some strength, but his tone remained unchanged and he said In fact, his heart was not so peaceful. He believed what she said. Wei Yuxian breathed a sigh of relief, at least it would not arouse his suspicion anymore, that was good. The two of them didn't speak again as they drove home. It was dinner time when we got home. Aunt Fu took Wei Yuxian's canvas bag at the door and asked her to change her shoes and wash her hands before eating dinner. Wei Yuxian said softly thank you, and after Fu Xuanyi changed his shoes, she went to wash hands with him and sat down to have dinner. The servant brought the dinner, and Wei Yuxian took a look at it. It was a different dish, but it still looked delicious. In the days since she came to Fu Mansion, she has never eaten the same nutritious meal. Each meal has a new twist. She doesn't know where the chef got the recipe from, but he can make it different every day. It has to be said that the chef of Fu Mansion is so good, the dishes are many and the food is delicious. In just over a month, she has gained a lot of weight, and her body has become noticeably rounder. She no longer looks frail, but she is not overly fat either, just right. And her belly, she felt a little bigger, and she was about to show her pregnancy. People said that it takes 3 months to show pregnancy, so counting the days, it was almost there. After a sumptuous dinner, Wei Yuxian went back to the room and sat for a while, reading a book. Almost half an hour later, there was a knock on the door. Thinking that the person outside the door might be Fu Xuanyi, she felt a little nervous and said, "Come in." The door was pushed open and Wei Yuxian looked over. The person who came was indeed Fu Xuanyi. He took off his coat and put on a set of comfortable home clothes, which made him look less oppressive. Wei Yuxian's expression relaxed a little and she called out, "Master Xian." Fu Xuanyi said as he walked in. Wei Yuxian quickly moved a chair to her side and asked him to sit down. After Fu Xuanyi sat down, he took her textbook, looked through it, and asked, "What don't you understand?" In Wei Yuxian's textbook, as long as it is about what the teacher has said, there will be neat notes line by line, which is very pleasing to the eye. Fu Xuanyi felt very comfortable and took a few more glances at her handwriting. It was straight and regular, in block letters. After browsing through it roughly, he put the book back on the table. Wei Yuxian picked up the book and turned to the content that the teacher taught this afternoon, which she did not understand. She pointed to the content in the book and said, "I don't understand this chapter very well. I'm sorry, Master Xian." Fu Xuanyi listened to her pronounce Master Xian, and felt a little bored with this title for some reason. He doesn't think it's a big deal when others call him that, and he even thinks that others should call him that, but Wei Yuxian. She used to call him that, and he didn't feel anything wrong with it. Now, he doesn't like Wei Yuxian calling him that, because it makes them seem unfamiliar. Fu Xuanyi knew the reason was that his feelings for Wei Yuxian had changed and he didn't want them to be so alienated anymore. This title is no different from outsiders, so he doesn't like it. He didn't look at where Wei Yuxian pointed out, but looked into her eyes and said, "Change the name." Huh, his thinking changed so quickly that Wei Yuxian obviously didn't keep up. After a while, she understood the meaning of Fu Xuanyi's words and was a little surprised. Fu Xuanyi asked her to change her name. Tell her not to call him Master Xian. Wei Yuxian looked into Fu Xuanyi's eyes, trying to find out whether he was joking, but how could Fu Xuanyi joke with her? Fu Xuanyi's expression was still so plain, with no intention of joking at all. Also, how could a person like him make a joke? She asked, "What would Master Xian want me to call you?" She just thought that Fu Xuanyi didn't like this title and didn't want to hear it, so he asked her to change it. Fu Xuanyi said two words lightly, "It's up to you. Just follow me." Wei Yuxian thought for a while and remembered what the old lady once said. The old lady said that there is no need to call her Mr. Xian, just Axuan. But, wouldn't it be a bit too intimate to call him Ah Xian? A person like Fu Xuanyi is from a different world from her. Wouldn't it be too abrupt to call him that? Wei Yuxian couldn't make up her mind for a moment, and she was hesitant in her heart. In front of her, Fu Xuanyi stared at her again, as if he wanted her to give her a new name. She could only bite the bullet and call out cautiously, "A Xian." Fu Xuanyi agreed and was very happy. He was not dissatisfied at all. Hearing this title, he felt very happy. Ah Xian. He has never thought these two words sounded so good. How come it sounds so good when it comes out of her mouth? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 26. Wei Yuxian breathed a sigh of relief and thought that as long as he could accept it, she would call him that in the future. Anyway, they don't have many opportunities to talk. They just say hello at most every day, and then it's gone. It's just a title. They get used to it after calling it a few times. Wei Yuxian opened the book again, placed it in front of Fu Xuanyi, pointed at the parts she didn't know and said, "I don't understand here." Fu Xuanyi took the book in his hand, looked at the place she pointed out, looked at it carefully for a while, and then started to explain, starting with the simplest thing. His voice is very nice, not rough or shrill, but a deep, magnetic voice that is different from bubble sounds, mature and steady. His explanation was also very good. Wei Yuxian could understand it immediately and understood the meaning of what the teacher said in class. Fu Xuanyi gradually deepened the difficulty and explained the difficult things. Wei Yuxian listened carefully and temporarily forgot her fear of him. She was immersed in the ocean of knowledge, like a sponge, constantly absorbing water. During this lecture, 2 hours passed unknowingly, and Fu Xuanyi finally broke down all the things Wei Yuxian didn't understand and kneaded them into her mind. Wei Yuxian looked at Fu Xuanyi and thanked him very much for taking the time to explain to her tonight. Seeing that his throat was a little dry, she got up and poured him a glass of water. "Drink water," she said. Fu Xuanyi picked up a glass of water and drank it. His dry throat felt better. What he said tonight is comparable to what he said all week. It was also the first time that Wei Yuxian heard him say so many words. Although his tone was still so cold, there was no hint of impatience at all. Suddenly, I felt that Fu Xuanyi was not as scary as he imagined. He was also a human being, not the king of hell. Wei Yuxian's mood, which had been depressed all afternoon, became better as she absorbed the knowledge, and she no longer struggled with what Nanading said. It's her business to say whatever she likes. The mouth is on her body, so she can't pinch her mouth with her hands to prevent her from talking. With a slight smile on her face, Wei Yuxian said, "Thank you, I understand everything." "No need," Fu Xuanyi said, "next time if you don't understand anything, come to me." Wei Yuxian nodded and said, "Okay, I will." This Master Xian was not as difficult to get along with as she imagined. On the contrary, he was a little bit nice, but his cold face made others persuade him to leave. But this should be due to his personality. Maybe he doesn't like to show his emotions naturally and controls his emotions better. Also, he may have no desires, so the expression on his face rarely changes. He also carries a string of black Buddhist beads on his hand. He would put them in his hands to play with when he had nothing to do. He was very fond of them. It was well founded to see that he had no desires and no demands. The internet also said that he was some kind of ascetic Buddhist, and the evidence became even more obvious. Fu Xuanyi stood up. He had no reason to stay any longer and said, "Get some rest early." Wei Yuxian said got up and walked him out of the room, saying thank you to him. After waiting for others to leave her room, Wei Yuxian glanced at the time. It was almost 10 o'clock. She had been alone with Fu Xuanyi for 2 hours. Before that, she was still worried that Fu Xuanyi was a difficult person to get along with, but now, she doesn't think so anymore. At least Fu Xuanyi was not as difficult to get along with as she imagined. Therefore, communication is really important. It can solve many things, and it can also build relationships between people and understand what kind of people they are. Wei Yuxian hummed an old song she loved. She packed the books in her hands and put them in the cabinet on her desk. She also took out the books she would use for class tomorrow and put them into her canvas bag. It was getting late, so she went into the bathroom to take a shower, came out to dry her body for a while, yawned sleepily, and didn't delay sleeping. She went to bed, closed her eyes, and fell asleep soon after. There was a warm heater on in the room, and there was floor heating on the floor, which made the whole room warm. It was very comfortable to fall asleep and I didn't want to get up. Wei Yuxian had a very comfortable sleep. The next morning, when the sky was slightly bright, the cell phone on the bedside rang. It was the alarm clock she had set. She opened her eyes drowsily and turned off the alarm clock. She didn't really want to get up because the bed was so comfortable. She stayed in bed for 2 minutes, then got up in one breath, washed up, and then went down to have breakfast. The maid brought the breakfast, and she and Fu Xuanyi sat face to face. The breakfast was still a nutritious meal, and it looked good. Wei Yuxian picked up the spoon and prepared to eat all the breakfast into her stomach before going to school. But when she picked up a spoonful of porridge and put it to her mouth, she suddenly smelled a disgusting smell. Almost instantly, she put down the spoon in her hand, covered her mouth and ran into the nearest toilet, retching. Her move alarmed everyone in the Fu family, and Fu Xuanyi and Aunt Fu followed her into the toilet. Fu Xuanyi looked at the person who was retching in the wash basin with a stern expression. He looked at Aunt Fu with a sharp look and asked, "Madam, what's for breakfast today?" Aunt Fu was so nervous that she said, "Madam, today's breakfast is fish fillet porridge." Maybe it's because Madam is a month old and has pregnancy symptoms. Fu Xuanyi frowned and walked to Wei Yuxian, but he didn't know what to do to make her feel less uncomfortable. After a while, Wei Yuxian finally lost her nausea, raised her head, and washed her hands and face with water. She just retched, nothing came out, but she had a strong feeling of wanting to vomit. She wanted to have breakfast just now, but suddenly she smelled a fishy smell, so she felt it and rushed in. She heard what Aunt Fu said just now. She may have had a pregnancy reaction. She also felt that what Aunt Fu said was right. This was a pregnancy reaction. She knew that pregnant people would suffer from morning sickness, but she didn't expect it to be like this. She just smelled a bit of strange smell and couldn't control the retching. This was just the beginning. What would she do if, in school? Before she had time to think about it, a voice from beside her interrupted her thoughts. How is it? Are you still feeling uncomfortable? It is Fu Xuanyi's unique, cool and mature voice, which is very recognizable. She looked at the people around her, took out 2 tissues and wiped her hands and face, and said, "Much better." She walked outside, and Fu Xuanyi followed her, looking at her face. Returning to the dining table, she smelled the porridge carefully. This time, she no longer felt like vomiting, so she ate with peace of mind. Opposite him, Fu Xuanyi hasn't eaten his breakfast for a long time, his eyes are deep, thinking about something. After a while, he said, "Don't go to school today, rest at home." He was worried about her physical condition. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 27. Wei Yuxian didn't think it was anything. Morning sickness didn't happen all the time. She thought that as long as she didn't smell the bad smell, she wouldn't have morning sickness. If you don't go to school for this reason, it will be a waste. She shook her head and said, "I'm fine. You can go to school. There aren't many classes today, 1 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. After 3 classes, the class is almost full." Fu Xuanyi also insisted on his own idea, rest at home and let the doctor check. Wei Yuxian looked at his face and his attitude was so unquestionable that she felt a lump in her throat and agreed. Fu Xuanyi will not change his mind unless she agrees. In addition, it's time for her prenatal checkup, so she can take a day off. After class, she will ask the teacher to send her the courseware and she will study at home. She nodded and said a dull hum, not that happy. I thought he wasn't so difficult to get along with last night, but today. His attitude was too tough. He couldn't refute or change every decision he made. He could only let it go. This feeling was too frustrating, as if someone else was controlling his life. The little confidence she had in Fu Xuanyi was immediately destroyed again. He was not easy to get along with at all, he was just a cold and domineering person. It was his decision to let him come to Fu Mansion before, and it was also his decision to keep his child. Now it was his idea to keep him from going to school. Overbearing. After breakfast, Wei Yuxian stayed at home alone, while Fu Xuanyi went to work in the company. Before leaving, he asked Aunt Fu to call the doctor to check her body and report her day's itinerary and the results of the examination. Aunt Fu nodded yes and bent slightly. "Master Xian, walk slowly." Wei Yuxian returned to the room gloomily, took out the book in the canvas bag, and thought about reading it for herself. After looking at it for a while, she took out her mobile phone and sent a message to the counselor to ask for leave. The counselor probably hadn't gone to work yet, and she didn't reply to her message after a few minutes. Wei Yuxian stopped waiting, put her phone aside, and continued reading. After an unknown amount of time, a message alert came from the phone she had placed next to her. She glanced at it and saw that the counselor had replied to her message and agreed to her request for leave. Later, she sent the leave information to the teacher and told the teacher that she was taking leave today so that the teacher would not record her as absent from class. After doing this, the doctor invited by Aunt Fu also came to Fu's house and was invited to her room by Aunt Fu. Duck 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 dash. There was a knock on the door, and Wei Yuxian said, "Come in and let people in." Aunt Fu walked in with a female doctor in her 30s, followed by 2 nurses carrying medical kits. Wei Yuxian stood up to greet the visitor, stretched out her hand and said, "Hello, doctor." The doctor shook her hand gently and said, "Hello madam, I will check your body today. Sorry to bother you." The doctor asked Wei Yuxian to sit down and took her pulse first. Then he asked about Wei Yuxian's recent situation, and then suggested that she go to the hospital for a prenatal checkup. The hospital has more complete facilities, which can conduct more comprehensive examinations and detect unhealthy conditions of the fetus in a timely manner. Wei Yuxian thought for a while and agreed, but Aunt Fu was not sure yet, so she called Fu Xuanyi to ask. After getting permission, she asked the driver to take Wei Yuxian to the hospital and followed her there herself. After she heard that she had to obtain Fu Xuanyi's permission before going out, she felt that Fu Xuanyi was a domineering and arbitrary person and even more difficult to get along with. She rode in the car all the way to the hospital. It was a hospital she was familiar with, belonging to Lin Chenjiayuan's family. This hospital is the best hospital in Kyoto and has the most comprehensive equipment. Wei Yuxian's examination here is the best. Aunt Fu was with her the whole time, following her, for fear that something might happen to her. In about half an hour, the prenatal checkup was over, and not long after, the results came out. The doctor said that her condition was normal and the two babies were also very healthy. She just needs to supplement some nutrition. Now her body is still a little thin, and it will be more difficult to take care of two babies. She took the doctor's words to heart and said that she would definitely supplement her nutrition and eat all the nutritious meals cooked in the kitchen. The main reason is that she was too thin before, so she needs to make up for it now. After going home after the examination, when it was meal time, when the servant brought out the nutritious meal, Wei Yuxian obviously noticed that the portion had become a bit larger. But she said nothing and ate it all without wasting any of it. After lunch, Wei Yuxian sat downstairs for a while, then felt sleepy, got up and went upstairs to sleep. Simply resting at home today, Wei Yuxian didn't set an alarm clock and didn't feel nervous about going to class, so she just relaxed and fell asleep. Downstairs, Aunt Fu was reporting to Fu Xuanyi about Wei Yuxian's prenatal checkup. After the report, there was nothing special, so Fu Xuanyi hung up the phone. The next day, the weather was very good, it didn't rain or snow. There was a little sun, which was very weak, but it made me feel warm. Wei Yuxian spent a day reviving her energy. After arriving at school, she was full of energy. She was in very good condition during class and could understand everything the teacher said. In this way, days passed day by day, and the time came half a month later. Ever since Wei Yuxian had pregnancy symptoms that day, her condition had gotten worse day by day. She couldn't smell any strange smell. She couldn't smell the fishy smell of the food, the smell of meat, or the smell of the toilet. Just smelling it makes me want to vomit. The kind that can't be controlled. If she was fine at home, she could run to the toilet if she wanted to vomit without worrying about anything. But that's not possible at school. She has to go to class, and there are so many classmates around her, and everyone is watching. Several times, she smelled the food brought by her classmates in class and couldn't help but run to the toilet to retching. In addition, her appetite has obviously subsided a lot. She used to eat nutritious meals until she was full even if she couldn't finish them. Now, she doesn't want to eat those things. I still vomited after eating it, which was very annoying. So during this period, Wei Yuxian seemed to have lost some weight, her energy was not as good as before, she was lethargic, and she was easily distracted in class. Her condition is no longer suitable for her to stay in school because her pregnancy reaction is too severe and she needs to rest in a relaxing environment. Fu Xuanyi naturally pays attention to her physical condition every day. Seeing that her pregnancy symptoms are getting more and more serious, she can't eat well, can't sleep well, and vomits from time to time, which makes her heartache. If you are pregnant, you will suffer such a big sin. It was obviously fine a few days ago, but it suddenly became so serious. On this day, Fu Xuanyi came to pick up Wei Yuxian from school. He felt heartbroken when he saw her holding the car door with her fleshless hand and sitting in. Her face was pale and she was in low spirits. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Ju Yi. Chapter 28. Without saying a word, he started the car and went home for dinner. Wei Yuxian was not in a good mood, and after saying hello to Fu Xuanyi, she didn't say much. She vomited several times today, and it was so uncomfortable that her stomach almost came out. What's more, Ding Nana and the other three were sarcastically saying that she was a poor girl who was being kept by an old man. It's upsetting to hear it, and it makes your already bad mood even worse. How could there be such an annoying person in this world? He kept making noises in his ears like a clown, saying those annoying things, thinking that he was very capable. Even if there is such an annoying person, he still has to appear next to her. God is really unfair. Wei Yuxian leaned against the car window with her eyes closed and took a short rest. She hasn't had a good rest these days. It's true that she's lethargic, and it's true that she can't sleep well. Fu Xuanyi turned his head and glanced at her thin face. Under the thick clothes, she looked even more petite and small. Going to school requires too much energy, and now she is in this situation. If this continues, she will only get harder and harder, and her spirit will become worse and worse. This cannot go on. Fu Xuanyi's expression was serious, and the air pressure around him was even lower. Wei Yuxian, who was resting with her eyes closed, suddenly felt a little cold and folded her hands in front of her chest to draw more warmth for herself. I was wondering, why did the temperature suddenly drop? After returning home, Wei Yuxian ate some dinner, but couldn't take a single bite of the rest. What she just ate was spit out after a while. She sighed and leaned back on the chair, thinking that it would be really difficult to have a baby and suffer such a big pain. She still had some doubts about whether her decision to give birth to the child was the right one. However, regardless of whether it was correct or not, she had no right to choose. Fu Xuanyi would definitely let her give birth to the child. The same goes for the Fu family. At this moment, Wei Yuxian felt like she was a fertility machine. No one loved her here. The reason why Aunt Fu and others respected her was only because of the child in her belly. The same goes for the old lady. The reason why she is so kind to her is because of the child in her belly. Even if she can live in such a luxurious environment as Fu Mansion and enjoy a life she has never enjoyed before, it is all because of the child in her belly. No one loves her. Even the parents who gave birth to her and raised her don't like her. In this case, why give birth to her? Is it just for her to come to this world to suffer? Wei Yuxian became sentimental again. She couldn't help but think about bad things and negative energy. I can't help but think about it, and there's nothing I can do about it. As she thought about it, tears gathered in her eyes, and when they were full, they started to flow down. She cried silently, not daring to make a sound. She wiped her tears silently and huddled on the chair, looking so pitiful. She cried secretly, not daring to tell anyone, and had no one to talk to. The environment she was in was not good but good. In school, she had to face sarcastic comments from her roommates. After returning to Fu's house, she had to watch Fu Xuanyi's face as she lived her life. She was cautious everywhere. But no matter how hard she tried to do better, the people around her would not give her a good look. Not only did Ding Nana have a bad look on her, but she also insulted her even more, saying that she seduced Cheng Jinjiao and that she was a bitch. Has she ever seduced Cheng Jinjiao? If Cheng Jinjiao hadn't taken the initiative to find her, she and Cheng Jinjiao wouldn't even be friends. And Fu Xuanyi is the same. He keeps a cold face every day, as if everyone owes him millions. He never smiles, like a living king of hell. The more Wei Yuxian thought about it, the more aggrieved she became, and the more tears she shed. She obviously did nothing wrong. Why should she endure this? Now that she has 2 children in her belly, she feels even worse after suffering so much. When Fu Xuanyi opened the door and walked in, what he saw was this scene. Wei Yuxian was curled up on a chair, holding her knees with her hands, wiping the tears from her face. She was so fragile, as if she would break if pinched. Fu Xuanyi's heart suddenly tightened. He strode in and asked with a sullen face, "What's wrong? Someone is bullying you." Wei Yuxian was startled when she saw it was him. Her breathing stopped for a few seconds and she didn't dare to cry anymore. When she heard what he asked again, was someone bullying her? She wanted to say, yes, someone was bullying her. Fu Xuanyi is one of them. But she didn't dare, she couldn't say such words. Who is Fu Xuanyi? His status is known throughout Kyoto. How can she dare to go against him? Fu Xuanyi only needs one word and she will disappear from this world. How can she dare to say anything wrong about him? She quickly wiped away the tears on her face, stopped crying, lowered her head and did not dare to look at him, and whispered, "I'm fine, no one bullied me, I'm just in a bad mood, and I'm always vomiting." She was not in a good mood these days. She was in an abnormally low mood, which made Fu Xuanyi have to think about the possibility of her illness. Pregnant women are more likely to suffer from depression than the average person. Her situation now looks a bit dangerous. If she continues to let it go, she might really suffer from depression. For the sake of her health, Fu Xuanyi called a doctor to check her. The final results show that Wei Yuxian has indeed been depressed recently. This has no impact, but if she continues to be depressed, there is a high chance that she will develop depression. The doctor said that it was probably because she had been under too much stress recently and was emotionally sensitive during pregnancy that she became like this. He told her to relax, stop thinking so much, adjust her mood, and recover as soon as possible. After sending the doctor away, Fu Xuanyi took the black beads on his wrist, rubbed them one by one, and asked, "What kind of pressure are you feeling recently?" Speaking of stress, there's a lot of it. Wei Yuxian just picked one of them to talk about. The pressure in class is too great. I haven't been able to sleep well recently, and I can't concentrate on listening in class. I've fallen behind a lot. If it continues like this, she'll probably have to rebuild it. This is one of her pressures. Fu Xuanyi stared at her thin chin for a while and said, "Stop studying to raise a baby." Wei Yuxian's subconscious reaction was no. No, I can't drop out of school. She still wanted to study early and work to make money. If she takes a break from school for a year, she will be able to make money 1 year later. She doesn't have so much time to waste. Your body is not suitable for school. Fu Xuanyi hit the nail on the head with a tough tone. Wei Yuxian bit her lower lip, feeling very aggrieved and anxious. Tears welled up in her eyes all of a sudden. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Ju Yi. Chapter 29. Who did her body become like this because of? It's not because of him. If it weren't for the 2 children in her belly, she wouldn't be in such a situation. She couldn't eat well, couldn't sleep well, was mentally exhausted, and had random thoughts. But now, this man is still saying such heartbreaking words coldly. He is simply inhuman. He is just a cold robot with no emotions. Domineering and arbitrary. She was accusing the indifferent man in front of her in her heart, but she didn't dare to say a word, for fear that the man's face would become even more ugly after hearing those words. Wei Yuxian felt very aggrieved. In the Fu family, she was not free, and she was not free at home either. Only in school, she had a little more freedom, but she still had to be insulted by others. How could her life be so gloomy? The more she thought about this, the more tears she shed, and the beads fell one by one, unstoppably. She didn't want to cry. It was so embarrassing to cry in front of this man, but she couldn't help it. Her tears were uncontrollable and were about to fall. When this man saw her tears, he would only laugh at her cowardice in his heart, right? Wei Yuxian pursed her lips, sniffed, and raised her hand to wipe away her tears. The tears she shed were so hot, but her heart was so cold, and she couldn't see any hope for the future. A drizzle began to fall outside the window, which seemed to reflect the mood at this time. It was dark and the sun could not be seen. The moment Fu Xuanyi saw her tears pouring out, his heart suddenly stopped. Terrified. This was the second time he saw her cry, and just now was the first time. In the past, when he saw those women's tears, he could only feel indifferent and not have any feelings. But now, her tears seemed to burn to his heart. This time her tears were even more surging. Much more than before. He raised her head and looked at the tears on her face. Her eyes and nose were red from crying, and her face was pink, like a poor little animal in need of care. His tone couldn't help but soften a little. Why are you crying? You want to go to school. Wei Yuxian looked at him with big watery eyes, saying nothing, nodding or shaking her head, and not daring to make any expressive movements or words. Of course she wanted to go to school. It had been more than 2 months since school started, half a semester had passed, and now she was suddenly asked to suspend school. How could she accept it? She wrung her fingers tightly. This small movement betrayed her thoughts, and Fu Xuanyi knew it at a glance. In fact, he knew without looking that she cherished the opportunity to go to school, otherwise she wouldn't have had that night because of money. In order to go to college, she would even give up such an important thing. You can imagine how much she likes going to school. Wei Yuxian didn't really like going to school. She just liked to gain knowledge. After gaining more knowledge, she could exchange for more money. Fu Xuanyi could only explain patiently, showing patience that he had never shown to others before, and said, "Your current health is really not good for studying in school. Her body is so weak that she can't eat well or sleep well. Coupled with the pressure of studying, it will be even worse. For the sake of her body, he couldn't let her consume it any longer. In addition, she is still depressed now, so she cannot have more pressure and must reduce her burden." Wei Yuxian's mind was a little confused at the moment, and her thinking ability had declined. She didn't want to think about so many things. She only knew that she wanted to go to school, and this was what she must insist on. At this moment, she didn't want to see Fu Xuanyi's cold face, which would make her afraid to think and afraid. She sniffed and said boldly, "You go out, I want to be alone." Fu Xuanyi also knows that she needs to calm down now. When she calms down, she will think about whether her body is suitable for school. She has to figure it all out herself. Without saying anything, he released her chin, stood up, and said, "Think about it carefully." He walked out of the room. Wei Yuxian looked at the man's back, which was broad and cold. Even his back was so oppressive and not gentle at all. Watching him walk out, the door opened and closed, shutting out everything. This small space became her temporary shelter, a quiet space that belonged to her alone. She hugged her knees and stared blankly at the door, letting everything go, not knowing what was going on in her mind. Just like that, minutes and seconds passed, the tears on her face dried up, her trembling body gradually calmed down, and she looked tired. She didn't want to think about whether to go to school or not. Now, she just wanted to have a good sleep and let her tired body repair. She wiped the tears that no longer existed on her face, put down her hands, put her legs down from the chair, put on her slippers, walked to the bed, turned off the light and covered herself with the quilt. She was very tired that day. She had attended classes all day, which consumed most of her energy. She also had to deal with the ridicule of her roommates, Fu Xuanyi's cold face, and pregnancy reactions, which made her exhausted. Not long after going to bed, she fell asleep with some random thoughts, but her sleep was not peaceful. Even in her sleep, she frowned and had nightmares. It was not a good rest. She woke up several times during the night, each time being frightened awake by nightmares. After waking up, She hugged the quilt and shivered, and it took a while before she fell back asleep. After she fell asleep, there were new nightmares, which kept circulating and filling her brain. Tired, really tired, exhausted both physically and mentally. When she woke up again, she took the phone on the bedside and looked at the time. It was time to get up. There was a class in the first period today. She dragged her tired body up and drank half a glass of warm water before walking into the bathroom to wash up. She stood in front of the mirror and looked at herself in the mirror. The dark circles under her eyes were obvious, and her face was inexplicably pale and unhealthy. Her lips are also a bit white, and with her slim face, she still looks like a ghost without special effects makeup. The state was so bad that it exploded. She touched her face. There was some meat on her face before, but the meat she had managed to raise was gone again. As the night passed, her mind sobered up and she regained her ability to think. Squeezing out the toothpaste and brushing her teeth mechanically, she stared blankly at herself in the mirror. As she brushed, she wondered if the toothbrush had touched the base of her tongue. The feeling of vomiting immediately came up, and she held the wash basin and vomited. The vomiting in the already empty stomach made it even more terrifyingly empty, as if the stomach was about to be vomited out. After a few minutes, the uncomfortable feeling finally passed. After rinsing her mouth, she looked up at herself in the mirror. Her face seemed to be paler again, more like a female ghost. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Ju Yi. Chapter 30. In this state, how much energy did she have to go to school? Just dealing with Fu Xuanyi and pregnancy reactions was enough for her. Moreover, after taking a break from school, she will no longer have academic pressure, nor will she see Ding Nana and the others again, and she will no longer have to be abused by them. After taking a year off from school, she could completely cut off contact with Ding Nana and others, and wait until the next year to go to school again. She would be 1 year younger than Ding Nana. Unless Ding Nana did it on purpose, they would never have the chance to meet again. Thinking about it this way, there are still benefits to taking a break from school. Besides, she is a student at Kyoto University of Finance and Economics. This is a fact that will not change. Even if she takes a break from school, she will. After washing up, she walked downstairs to have breakfast. The meals prepared for her in the kitchen were now even more exquisite, and no food with an odor was allowed to be served. No matter how well it is handled, it still won't work. At the dining table, Fu Xuanyi had been sitting early. She consciously came to sit in front of her and enjoyed her breakfast. She was not even in the mood to say hello. There was silence on the dining table, except for the occasional sound of tableware clinking against each other. Wei Yuxian lowered her head and focused all her attention on breakfast, ignoring the cold and oppressive eyes of the man opposite her. Fu Xuanyi was looking at her, looking straight at her without any cover-up. He asked in his unique cold tone, "Have you considered it?" Wei Yuxian ate her breakfast for a moment, then started eating again, swallowing the food in her mouth, lowering her head and whispering, "Give me 1 more day. She hasn't fully figured it out yet." The few minutes she spent thinking about it in the bathroom were not enough for her to fully understand it. She needed more time. A day can be said to be long or short. It is both difficult and not difficult at the same time. Fu Xuanyi can still afford to wait. He gave her the day. "I'm going to get answers tonight," he said. Wei Yuxian said in no mood and continued to eat breakfast. The dining table fell into silence again. After a while, Wei Yuxian was full and waited quietly for the man opposite him to finish eating so that he could send her to school. Not long after, Fu Xuanyi was also full. The two of them got up and went out, driving to school. They were silent all the way, with nothing to say. Wei Yuxian went to the classroom where today's class was held and sat in the front row, separated by a gulf-like distance from Ding Nana and the 3 people sitting in the back row. This is her usual approach. After the 2 classes in the morning, Wei Yuxian was already exhausted. She went to get the meal sent by Aunt Fu, and then hurried back to the dormitory, thinking of going to bed as soon as she was full so that she could cope with the afternoon classes. But how could her simple idea be realized so easily? Ding Nana and the others will never let her have an easy time. As soon as she returned to the dormitory, she was greeted by the cynicism of her roommates. Each of the 3 people said one sentence, which added up to 3 sentences. They said more than one sentence. She ate the food in her hands in silence, chewing mechanically, not feeling the deliciousness of the food at all, as if she was eating just to live. Her silence will not bring her roommates any rest, but only intensified insults. The words became more and more unpleasant, and the food in her mouth became more and more unpalatable. She forced herself to swallow the food into her stomach, not to waste it. Halfway through, she suddenly ran to the toilet and vomited violently. She vomited so hard that she vomited out everything she had just eaten. With physiological tears in the corners of her eyes, Wei Yuxian suddenly wanted to cry. She leaned against the wall of the toilet and sobbed softly. Tears fell freely again. Her tears were free and worthless. Even if she cried, no one would feel sorry for her. Covering her mouth, she let the tears flow through her hands, flow down her arms and drip to the ground. She cried for a while in the toilet, sad emotions filling her mind. After a while, the emotion passed. She wiped away her tears and ignored how red and swollen her eyes were. She walked in with her head lowered and packed away the half-eaten meal. She was not in the mood to eat anymore. She didn't want Ding Nana and the others to see her in such a miserable state, even though she had always been embarrassed in front of them. Ding Nana looked at her with a playful look and said, "Wei Yuxian, you have been running to the toilet every day to vomit recently. Sometimes you will cover your mouth and run out suddenly during class. Vomiting every day and unable to eat, are you pregnant with the old man's seed?" Chen Wei and Feng Yi burst out laughing. The former said, "I think it's 80% true. Otherwise, how could a normal person go to the toilet to vomit every day? Do you think that's true, Sister Na?" There was another burst of harsh laughter in the dormitory. Wei Yuxian's heart felt cold and her whole body was cold. They guessed correctly, she was indeed pregnant, and her vomiting every day was also caused by pregnancy. But will she admit it? Does she dare to admit it? She didn't dare to say a word because what they said was the truth. She carried the packed thermos bucket and quickly walked into the toilet. Holding back the tears that were pouring out again, she hid in the toilet again. She squatted on the ground holding her knees and cried bitterly. She was so sad that her whole body was numb and trembling, and her whole body was cold. No matter how thickly she wore, she still shivered. Outside, the voices of Ding Nana and the 3 people still did not stop. They even spoke loudly on purpose so that these words could reach her ears. "Wei Yuxian, how does it feel to be an old man? Do you need to take medicine to get hard? Are you still in ecstasy? Ha ha ha. Did the old man tell you that he would give you money to give birth to a child, so you were willing to give him a child? How much did the old man give you? I see that you eat so well every day, and there are people who specially bring food here. You are also dressed so well and used so well. How much does this old man give you a month?" Every word they spoke was like a knife stabbing into her heart. The heart became riddled with holes, blood kept pouring out, and it could not be cured. She stayed in the toilet for more than 10 minutes, and the people outside chatted for more than 10 minutes. Filthy words were swirling in her mind. She couldn't listen anymore. She didn't even care about the thermos bucket. She got up and walked out. Her eyes were red and there were obvious tears on her face. But she couldn't care about it now. She just wanted to leave this devil's cave as soon as possible. She picked up her canvas bag and mobile phone, strode out of the dormitory, slammed the dormitory door, and the world finally became quiet. Walking on the school road, she lowered her head to her chest for fear of being seen crying, and put on the big black hat of her coat, hiding her whole body in the big coat. She walked aimlessly on the school road, not knowing where she was going. At this moment, she just wanted to leave the school and didn't want to stay for a moment, because as long as she stayed here, she would have a chance of meeting Ding Nana and the others. There are still classes to attend in the afternoon, and they will inevitably meet then. Who knows what will happen? Warm reminder, if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to inform us. We will handle it as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding.